System activated.
जॉइन व्हायला सुरुवात झाली लोक.
ओपन कैंसिल ओपन का कैंसिल the site is trying to open the Zoom meeting.
ओपन करेंगे जरा क्लिक करेंगे इस पे. पण इथं चालू करतो मी.
हाँ जरा बघा
चालू करतो.
नाही तर गोटा तुम्हाला अडचण येईल. हे ठेवू का इथंच?
नाही ते हे होते इको होते साऊंड.
इथं मग तुम्हाला
म्यूट केले.
म्यूट हा
ఎవరు ఎందుకు మరి జీతం ఇవ్వడు
అప్పుడు కోవిడ్ లో ఏం చేయాలి ఇప్పుడు వేరే అప్లై చేసినాడు అసలు
అదంతా ఎవరు చెప్పిండు
తెలుస్తూ వాళ్ళకి
ह्याच्यामध्ये जाऊन बसता काय तुम्ही आपल्या कॉलेजचा वायफाय आहे तुझं ऑफिस मध्ये जाऊन बसता काय हा हा
ठाकूर सरांचा मेसेज आला पीपीटी शेअर करणार आहेत ते पण त्यांच्याकडे पॉवरचा कट आहे स्टँड बाय मोडला ठेवा म्हणजे आपलं
तुम्ही मला
त्याची पीपीटी आणि बघा तुम्हाला तुमचा सचिन कांबळे जरा फोन नंबर पाठवतो ठीक आहे. तुम्हाला ते आणखी काय करायचं
फोन नंबर बिन केले तरी
नाही तुमच्याचं म्हणजे व्हॉट्सअप वगैरे
डॉक्टर कनका, welcome and good morning. Good morning, Sawan sir.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dadas sir.
पण ते ग कॅमेरा चालू आहे लक्षात येत नाही गमतीच होतात आपली आहे ना उगाच इकडं बघ
Dadas sir. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
तुमचे म्हणजे तुम्हीच त्याचे होस्ट आहात.
Okay.
ते तुमच्या समोर स्क्रीनवर जे कोणी काही जण म्हणजे माईक चालू ठेवून गप्पा मारत असतात
हा बंद केलं.
त्यांना लगेच तिथून तुमच्या तिथूनच म्यूट करा म्हणजे प्रॉब्लेम येणार नाही.
बरोबर. ओके.
काय होतं काही जणांच्याकडून चुकून राहतात लक्षात येत नाही की आपला
हा, हा, हा. बरोबर.
म्यूट करायला पाहिजे पण तो केला गेला नाही
नाही, हा.
आणि मग कोणी स्पीकर असतो त्याला मध्येच
आता एका मॅडमनं म्यूट केलं तसं.
हा असू दे कसं आता आता असू द्या गप्पा मारू द्या काय हरकत नाही आमचं काही म्हणणं नाही.
नाही तरी पण
लेट देम डिस्कस नो प्रॉब्लेम.
धडस सर आवाजावर लक्ष.
धडस सर. हॅलो. गुड मॉर्निंग.
गुड मॉर्निंग ठाकूर सर. वेलकम. Dr. Thakur sir. Good morning and welcome. Am I audible? Dr. Shardul Thakur.
Yes, yes.
Good morning, sir. Thakur sir.
Just
Yes.
come here for a minute, na.
Yes, yes.
सुनो ऑडियो ना मैंने गलती से पहले ऑफ.
Your voice is not clear, sir.
तो
Your voice is not clear. Good morning, Kade sir. Am I audible? Kade sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good morning. Good morning.
बर बर बर. तुम्ही आता इथंच राहताय का? अप डाऊन आहे मिस्टर नव्हे, तुम्ही मिस्टर इथंच आहेत का जॉबला? असं म्हटलं हो.
Good morning and welcome all. Jathar sir.
Good morning, sir.
Jathar sir, good morning.
गुड मॉर्निंग टू यू.
कांबळे सर,
Yes.
तुमचे वेटिंग रूम एनेबल करा, म्हणजे अनेक जण आहे तुमच्या वेटिंग रूमला.
घेतले आज त्यांना घेतलेलं आहे.
सिक्युरिटी मध्ये गेला तुम्ही तर ते वेटिंग रूम एनेबल केलं. ऍडमिट म्हणायची गरज नाही कुणाला परत.
Honorable Vice Chairman Prithviraj Godse alias Baba, welcome and good morning. Honorable Vice Chairman Prithviraj Godse alias Baba, welcome and good morning.
बोलायचं त्यांनी जर बोललेलं मला
Jathar sir, welcome. Good morning.
गुड मॉर्निंग.
इंट्रोडक्शन देत नाही.
काय 11च्या वेळेस नंतर.
Yes. Agrawal sir, yes. Let the principal join. SB Patil sir, should we start?
Yes, better start. I think all guests have joined.
Yes sir, thank you. Good morning all.
Good morning.
Welcome. On behalf of Chhatrapati Shivaji Shikshan Mandal and Dadasaheb Jyotiram Godse Arts, Commerce, Science College, Vaduz, Taluka Khattar, District Satara, I welcome all. Welcome to the national webinar on recent trends in English language teaching, organized by Department of English, IQAC in collaboration with ILTAI Satara chapter. I take this opportunity to welcome Honorable Dadasaheb Godse alias Anna, father figure and chairman Chhatrapati Shivaji Shikshan Mandal Vaduz. I also welcome Honorable Prithviraj Godse, Vice Chairman Chhatrapati Shivaji Shikshan Mandal, and all office bearers. I also heartily welcome keynote speaker Dr. Shardul Thakur, Associate Professor and HOD, Chintaman Rao College of Commerce, Sangli, and Dr. Sanjay Dikshit, Professor, Mudhoji College, Paltan. It is my privilege and honor to welcome Dr. Nyandev Kade, Head Department of English, Amdar Shashikant Shinde Mahavidyalay, Medha, and Dr. Manisha Patil, Head Department of English, Yashwantrao Chauhan Institute of Science, Satara. I also welcome Professor Dr. Sunil Sawant, President, ILTAI, Satara, and HOD, Department of English, Kishanvir College Y, and all office bearers of ILTAI. I am very glad to welcome Dr. Gadas, Dr. Otari ma'am, Mr. Devendra Ranavre, and Dr. Jathar. Without wasting time, I would like to invite our Honorable Vice Chairman, Mr. Prithviraj Godse, alias Baba, for formal declaration of the inauguration of the national webinar. Prithviraj, please.
Good morning, all of you.
Yes, you are audible. Your voice is not clear, sir.
Good morning, all of you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Baba.
आज छत्रपती शिवाजी शिक्षण मंडळाच्या दादासाहेब ज्योतिराम गोडसे कॉलेजनी इंग्लिश डिपार्टमेंटने आयोजित केलेल्या या नॅशनल वेबिनारच्या उद्घाटन प्रसंगी उपस्थित असलेले महाविद्यालयाचे प्राचार्य आणि सर्व बाहेरील जे गेस्ट आहेत ते सर्वांचं प्रथमतः स्वागत करतो. या धावपळीच्या युगात इंग्लिश विषयाला जे महत्व आहे ते आणि त्यामध्ये होणारे जे बदल आहेत त्या संदर्भानं आज हा वेबिनार आयोजित केला आहे. त्याबद्दल प्रथमतः मी आयोजकांचा आभार मानतो आणि या तुमच्या उपक्रमाला शुभेच्छा देऊन या सत्राचं उद्घाटन झालं मी असं जाहीर करतो. आपणाला सर्वांना शुभेच्छा देतो आणि मी थांबतो. जय हिंद, जय महाराष्ट्र.
Thank you. Thank you, Prithviraj ji. Now I would like to invite Professor Dr. Sunil Sawant, President of ILTAI Satara Chapter and Head Department of English, Kishanvir College Y, to inform participants about the ILTAI. So, Sawant sir, please.
Good morning to all the dignitaries and all my friends in our Satara chapter ILTAI and whatever participants they have joined this important webinar on recent trends in English language teaching. Honorable Mr. Prithviraj Godse, who is the Vice Chairman of Chhatrapati Shivaji Shikshan Mandal, Honorable Dr. S.B. Patil, Principal of Dadasaheb Jyotiram Godse Arts, Commerce, Science College, Vaduz. Today's keynote speaker, Dr. Shardul Thakur, and the resource person, my friend, Dr. Nyandev Kade, who is also convener of our ILTAI Satara chapter. All the office bearers of our Satara chapter and all my teacher friends as well as students who have joined this important academic activity, on behalf of Satara chapter of English Language Teachers Association of India, I welcome you all in this national webinar. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the organizers of this webinar for within a very short period of time after signing their MOU, this Department of English of Dadasaheb Jyotiram Godse Arts, Commerce, Science College, Vaduz took this initiative of organizing this national webinar and invited Dr. Kare and Dr. Thakur as important speakers, resource speakers in today's webinar. In 5 minutes, I will briefly talk about LTI and also talk about some important activities of our Satara chapter. To talk briefly about LTI, okay, the English Language Teachers Association of India is the full form of our LTI. And this is the largest network of teachers of English in India. And I must take this privilege to announce that our association is, of course, a national level association. And at the same time, it is linked with an important international association, IATEFL, located in UK. Our English Language Teachers Association of India was started long back on August 7, 1969 by the late Padma Shri S. Natarajan, a noted and a very eminent educationist. He had this dream of bringing all English teachers under one umbrella, and he established this association and he introduced certain innovative programs. The first important activity he introduced was the Journal of English Language Teaching. And this is a journal we find being produced by our association right from its inception. It is a bi-monthly journal, and this has been made available to all the members of the association free of cost. Once you become the member of the association, you receive the issue of this journal whenever it is published. Besides this journal, our association offers different consultancy services, organizes meetings from time to time of different chapter heads, and organization of these meetings, it has become impossible to organize events offline. Our association has started organizing national level webinars. And different resource persons, they have been given opportunities to make presentations on different important topics in these webinars. Of course, the association organizes conferences at the national level and also at the regional level. One national level conference is going to be organized soon, and the association has invited abstract papers for this conference. In addition to conferences, our association organizes workshops, training programs for the teachers. Briefly about our Satara chapter. All of you know that our Satara chapter was started last year, and we appointed different teachers on the body of this chapter, And I had been given this wonderful opportunity to become the president of our Satara chapter. And because of COVID, we could not come together, but we have been meeting online on the occasion of different meetings and also different programs being organized. I would like to mention again that Satara chapter, within a very short period of 1 year, has signed MOUs with esteemed colleges from our Satara district. More than 8 to 9 colleges, they have signed their memorandum of understandings with our Satara chapter of English Language Teachers Association of India. Of course, our Kishanvir Mahavidyalaya Vai, where I work as professor and head of Department of English, this college, Kishanvir Mahavidyalaya Vai, was the first to sign their MOU with Satara chapter. And immediately after signing this MOU, my college, my department, organized one national level webinar where we invited Dr. Maya Pandit Narkar, former Pro-Vice Chancellor of IFLU, and Dr. Tripti Karikute, who is the current head of our Department of English, Shivaji University, Kolhapur, as keynote speaker and resource person, respectively. Immediately after that, Dr. Nandev Kaya, today's resource person, the convener of our Satara chapter, he also took the initiative and he organized 2-day national level online conference on a very relevant kind of topic, place of textbook in English language teaching in India, a dependable tool of knowledge transfer. And for this conference, such eminent personalities closely associated with our association, Professor Dr. Sathuvalli, Professor Dr. Sridhar Gokhale, former professor and head Department of English, Savitribai Phule, Pune University, Pune. He was the resource person for the first session, and Professor Dr. Tripti Karikute was once again the resource person for the second session. The entire second day was reserved for presentations, and under the able leadership of our convener, Dr. Nandev, this 2-day conference was a huge success. After that, Mudhoji College, Fulton, Education Society's Mudhoji College, Fulton, organized 1-day national webinar on cultural studies, a new approach to explore cultures, cultural texts and artifacts. And this was again a very important and very relevant kind of webinar, for which with the pursuit of these important members of this department, the head of the department, my student, Dr. Sarita Mane, and our very active member, Dr. Sanjay Dikshit, LTI member, they succeeded in inviting Dr. Debarshi Prasad Nath from Tejpur University, Assam, and Dr. Pramod K. Nair, Professor, Department of English, University of Hyderabad. Both these scholars, very eminent scholars in cultural studies, they delivered very important presentations on this important topic of the theme of the webinar, cultural studies. And now we have this 4th webinar organized by Dadasaheb Jyotiram Godse Arts, Commerce, Science College, Vaduz, in collaboration with Satara chapter of our association. And for this, Dr. Shardul Thakur, very close friend of mine, he is the keynote speaker, and Dr. Nandev Kare, he is today's resource person. And the theme of the conference, the thrust area chosen for this conference, for this webinar, is recent trends in English language teaching. And both these are stalwarts, Dr. Thakur as well as Dr. Kare. And I am very confident that both these scholars belonging to our fraternity, our university, definitely they are going to make their presentations and introduce some important concepts and important theories in English language teaching to the August gathering today. So once again, I welcome all the participants for this national webinar on behalf of Satara chapter of LTI, and I express my deep sense of gratitude to the organizers of this webinar for giving me this wonderful opportunity to talk briefly about our national level association, as well as the kind of work, the kind of, we can say, vibrant activities that Satara chapter has introduced recently in the vicinity of in the jurisdiction of our Shivaji University, Kolhapur. And I am confident that other colleges, all those colleges who have signed their memorandum of understanding with our chapter, they are also going to organize in the near future very important activities. So I definitely feel in a way honored to be here in the midst of you. I give my blessings to the organizers of the webinar, and of course all the participants, they will get enriched in one way or the other by today's webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your brief note on LTI and your blessings. Now, I request my colleague, Professor Shiv Kumar Agrawal, to introduce the webinar. Agrawal, sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, all. Nahi jnanena sadrusham pavitram mihe vidyate. Meaning, there is no other thing in the world as pious as knowledge. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Chairman of Chhatrapati Shivaji Shikshan Mandal, Vadodara, Honorable Dada Saheb Godse, alias Anna, Vice Chairman Prithviraj Godse, he is also the inaugurator of this webinar. Dear office bearers, Honorable President of LTI Satara chapter, Dr. Sunil Ji Sawant, chapter convener and resource person for the session, Dr. Jnandev Kare, and keynote speaker, Dr. Shardul Thakur, chairpersons, Dr. Manisha Patel and Dr. Dikshit of Palcom College, and moderators for the two sessions, Dr. Anil Dadas of Dahibodi College, Vajayanti Otari ma'am of Rehmatpur College, Dr. Lakshman Jathar of Maini College, and Mr. Devendra Ranavre of Maswad College, and all my colleagues and dear friends. Today, in this webinar, I welcome you all, and I have a doubt in my mind. What is that doubt? If we have a close look at English in our school curriculum or college syllabuses, we see that English is being taught as a language, not as a language, but as a subject. Our students are being taught English alphabets. They are being taught English words, phrases, clauses, voices, degrees, narration, descriptor, so forth and so on. So many things of English they have been being taught. But as a language as such, we are far away from the expected reality. This is my conviction. So far, my thinking goes, students are given lessons in grammar of English language. And grammar is the main obstacle that does not allow our students learn the language. This is what I am having the firm belief in. In our colleges and universities also, literary works including drama, poetry, novel, short stories, essays are prescribed for study. Assuming that the university authorities assume that our students know English language. They assume that the students know English language, that is only by the university authorities prescribe dramas, poems, and short stories. I have no doubt that as a subject, our students are quite okay with English. But as a language, the situation is far away from being satisfactory. It is an unspoken and never thought fact. Keeping this in mind, our department teachers, Ambassador, we thought of having a dialogue on English language teaching. We telephoned Jnandev Kale sir of Medha College, the convener of ILTAE. We discussed with him about the conduction and the fruitfulness of the webinar. He suggested a number of topics. He suggested a number of speakers. But as I know, I was having a good number of topics and good number of scholars as well. But Jnandev Kale's expertise in language teaching area is beyond questioning. I knew this. I knew, but not the area of specialization, but the area of his thinking is language, English language teaching. I had also heard Dr. Shardul Thakur as well. So Kamble sir and I discussed this thing, and we came to the conclusion that instead of dealing with other subjects in the sky, let us come to the ground root reality and let us do something for our students that may open a new vista in the field of English language teaching. So I made an earnest request to Dr. Jnandev Kale, and to our surprise, he gave his consent without any hesitation and agreed with his presentation on ELT. He told me that he would be talking on no grammar approach to English language teaching. As I have already said, that grammar is the only obstacle in the way of learning English as a language. I was very much happy with Dr. Gnandev Kale's topic of deliberation, and we people are feeling very much lucky to have Shardul Thakur sir and Dr. Gnandev Kale sir as the resource persons for the day. We have been so much lucky to get the consent of all the concerned at such a short notice. I telephoned Dadas sir, I telephoned Dotari ma'am, and all these people immediately gave me their consent. And the result is before you, and we are together here on this platform. So, without wasting much time, we are eager to hear Shardul Thakur sir. And with this, I conclude and request Dr. Sachin Kamble to take the talk ahead. Kamble sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your introduction. Now we are turning towards the heart of this program. I would like to request Professor Dr. Anil Dadas, Head Department of English, Daivadi College, Daivadi, to introduce the keynote speaker and chairperson of the session. Dadas sir, please.
Thank you, Kamble sir. Good morning to one and all. And it's my pleasure to introduce the guest of honor, one who is going to deliver keynote speech for we people and the person we are with is Dr. Shardul Thakur, who is working as Associate Professor in Department of English at Chintaman Rao Commerce College, Sangli. And previously, he taught English at Ferguson College, Pune for almost 17 years. He did his MPhil from Department of English, Pune University, Pune, and the topic of his dissertation was an early 21st century rereading of George Orwell's 1984 after Arden, Hawkart, etc. He has also completed his PhD from the English and Foreign Languages University, that is IFLU, Hyderabad, India. And the topic of his PhD dissertation was Identity, Radicalization and Reform in Islam, an analysis of select personal contemporary narratives. Apart from teaching literature, his area of interest are literary criticism, political theory, current affairs, and international relations, interdisciplinary studies, Indian writing in English and translation, Dalit writing, translation studies, English language teaching, and the use of technology in teaching. That is the today's approach we have for this webinar. So this fellow is with us. We are waiting for his talk. And for this session, we have the chairperson, one who is known to all of you and friend of all, that is Professor Dr. Sanjay Dikshit, one who is now working at Madhoji Mahavidyalaya, Fulton, and working as coordinator IQAC Madhoji College, Fulton. He has 26 years teaching experience for UG and 15 years for PG. As far as his research area is considered, mainly he is a research guide, and under his supervision, 2 students are working for PhD and one for MPhil. He has presented research papers in many state, national, international seminars, conferences, and what we may say webinars also. He has also participated in state level, national level seminars, conferences, and worked as a resource person and chaired for many sessions. He successfully completed Train the Trainer workshop organized by IQAC Cluster India in collaboration with RUSA Maharashtra. He has published a book and 8 units in distance education textbook of Shivaji University as well as Bharati Vidyapeeth, Pune. And he worked as member of syllabus designing committee for BA Part First, Shivaji University, Kolhapur, and Chhatrapati Shivaji College, which is autonomous, Satara. Apart from this, he has also done extension work. He guided many colleges in vicinity for NAC RAF. Even he is working as secretary Madhoj College Alumni Association, which is a registered one, and he remained member Srimant Malojaraje Smurti Pratishthan, Fulton. And one more thing I want to add is that he has been awarded Best Teacher from Lions Club Fulton in the year 2012-13. So such nice personalities are with us for the very beginning session. And I think this much introduction is enough. Thank you very much. Over to Sachin Kamble.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Without testing your patience and curiosity, I would like to invite the keynote speaker, Dr. Shardul Thakur, Head Associate Professor in English, Chintaman Rao College of Commerce, Sangli. Thakur, sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kamble. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Okay. Can I share my screen?
Yes. Your screen is visible, sir.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you all the, I would like to thank the faculty members of Dadasaheb Jyotiram Godse Arts, Commerce and Science College, Vaduz, the Vice Chairman of Shivaji Education Society, Vaduz, Shri Prithviraj Godse, my senior colleagues from LTI Satara, particularly Dr. Savan, Dr. Nyadev Kale, a friend and a colleague, Dr. Sanjay Dikshit, one of my former colleagues from Mudaji College, Fulton, where I started my teaching career, Dr. Shiv Kumar Agrawal. I think it's a wonderful occasion that all of us have gathered here to discuss this topic, recent trends in English language teaching. As one of the previous speakers has mentioned, it's an important topic which needs a lot of attention, right? For the simple reason that English language teaching is not really up to the mark as we would want it to in all parts of the country. Right? This is a variable kind of a pattern, right? In the sense that certain urban, semi-urban areas that the teaching is better in the smaller settings.
Sir,
desired.
Your voice is not that much clear. Thakur sir.
Yes, sir. Let me try increasing the volume. Is it slightly better now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah, Dr. Kamble, better now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So about today's presentation, what I would initially, I'll just give you a quick outline of my presentation. First, I'll be talking about a very brief history of English language teaching. Since all of us are English language teachers, most of us are familiar with the history of English language teaching. But basically, I want to focus on how things have evolved and what exactly is the background to the introduction of communicative language teaching, right? How did it emerge? When did it emerge? And I'll be focusing on four major methods. Now, methods, approaches, let's use these terms somewhat synonymously, right? So communicative language teaching, CLT, content-based instruction or teaching, CBI, CBL. Right? The third is task-based language teaching, TBLT, sometimes it's referred to. And the fourth one is multiple intelligences. Now, a couple of disclaimers are in place here. This list is not an exhaustive list, right? For the simple reason that there are constraints of time. So we have to pick and choose. And I have picked the ones which I think are most relevant and about which probably we know about them generally, but we would like to know more about these methods, these approaches. Right? Now, I'll see how much time the first three points take up, A, B, and C. And based on that, I'll decide whether we still have time for the fourth one, multiple intelligence. Right? So to start with the first major point, a very quick run through the history of language teaching. Now we are focusing primarily on English language teaching. So you must be aware that almost till the 15th century or late 16th century, Latin being the dominant language in the West. So religion, commerce, trade, all of these things, Latin was the de facto language. But then due to the political changes that took place in Europe around that time, French, Italian, and English also starting coming up. So there's this interesting use of the word vernacular, right? So initially, the word vernacular used to refer to Latin. And, Latin was the classic standard language, and English was the poor vernacular. French was the vernacular. Italian was the vernacular. Later on, now you see what happened is that from the 16th century onwards, as French, Italian, and English started going up, Latin, the importance of Latin reduced, right? And lesser or fewer people started speaking that. So it almost became a extinct kind of a language, which was transformed from a living language to an occasional subject in the school curriculum. So classical Latin was studied in most schools across Europe, and that became a model for foreign language study. And this went on for 3 centuries almost, right? And that's the reason why the so-called grammar schools were very, very popular. All of us know about grammar schools, how the aim was to teach the sentence, the grammatical patterns of the foreign language, that is Latin in this case, memorizing them, basically in order to read literature in that particular language, right? And errors were simply not tolerated. The cane was a notorious feature of the grammar translation method. So roughly around the 19th century onwards, you see that there was a change that was brought about, right? The reform movement. And from that point onwards, you had the International Phonetic Alphabet set up as a result of the efforts of Henry Street and others. Right? And then you had the direct method, which became very popular. So the assumption was that you should immerse the student directly in the settings of a foreign language. The teacher was very important, right? And the teacher's skills mattered a lot. There was no proper textbook as such. So everything depended on the fluency, on the competence of the teacher. So this was not a very safe kind of a method, or not a very proper method to go about. And that is the reason from the 1920s onwards, you had the so-called methods era that began. Right? So you are, I would call this particular period, these 3 decades, 50s to 80s, as the most productive period of English language teaching. And remember that in America, a lot of developments started around the Second World War, right? Because the American Army was based in different parts of the world. They had to learn foreign languages, right? And the inputs that they kind of gathered from there, they used that to develop a language teaching program, which was implemented in various parts where the US Army was based. So there's a close connection between language teaching and the American imperialistic endeavor also. That's a different story for some other time. Right? So you have their methods like the audiolingual method, the situational method, and our focus will be on the communicative approach, the silent wave, total physical response. So from 1990s onwards, you have the content-based instruction and task-based language teaching. So this is our primary area of focus, and that's the reason why I'm kind of sort of skipping the earlier approaches or the earlier methods, right, to focus on communicative language teaching. Now, all of these methods that I talked about, audiolingual or situational. So one major problem with these approaches or methods was that they viewed language as a habit formation kind of a thing, just like a Pavlovian kind of experiment where you train a dog, right? You control the stimuli by giving a bone and then you ring the bell. So once the notion is that once you the dog learns to link the stimulus, right, with food, then the same response can be elicited. So something similar, crude analogy, something similar that was thought to be used in the classroom as well, right? And that's the reason why rules and regulations, grammatical rules and regulations were extremely important. Students had to memorize these rules. So that had to become part of habit formation. So now the problem with this view is, as Noam Chomsky, one of the most eminent linguists in the world, pointed out that language there's all children are born with something called a LAD, a language acquisition device. Right? It's something very amazing that a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old kid who's otherwise whose motor skills are not really developed, whose bodily functions have not been developed to that extent. But when it comes to language learning, the child can pick up almost 4 to 5 different languages given the right kind of exposure and can speak in these languages very, very fluently. And another interesting aspect that Chomsky talked about was that language is a device where using a finite set of rules, you can come up with a potentially infinite number of arguments. So then this whole theory about language as habit formation is very problematic, because if you have never heard a particular sentence, how can you create that particular sentence? So there's something more that is happening here. So moving from habit formation to maybe rule formation, there are certain rules which are present in a language, abstract kind of rules, which you have to internalize, which you have to understand, you have to internalize, right? You start using them, right? So that is the so-called language acquisition device. So to put it this way, if you talk about the correlation between linguistic competence and communicative competence. Communicative competence is a larger kind of a set, of which linguistic competence is a small subset, an important one though, right? But that is not everything. Only because you possess linguistic competence does not automatically mean that you will be a good communicator, right? You need this notion of communicative competence. You need to understand the notion of appropriateness, knowing what to say, how to say, whom to say, right? So if you are in a condolence meeting, you'd be expected to behave with a lot of appropriate given the not be cracking jokes. And if you're talking to someone who's your superior, who's your boss, you'll speak with a lot of.
Excuse me, please, sir.
Yes.
Sir.
Yeah, Dr. Kamble.
Your voice is not clear, sir. If possible, use headphone.
Okay, just give me a second.
With mic. devices, it is
Audible now?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes.
Yes, audible. Now audible.
Yes.
Now audible. Your mic is mute. Mic. Unmute your mic, sir.
Am I audible?
You are now audible.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, now it is clear.
Am I audible?
You are audible, sir. Now you are audible.
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay. So we were talking about the background to communicative language teaching. So Chomsky's intervention was a very important one, highlighting how merely possessing linguistic competence is not really enough. You need to have communicative competence. So here you have a shift from the linguistics structured approach to a communicative kind of an approach.
Let's
take a look at this small picture, which will kind of give you an idea about how a typical communicative approach based classroom works. Right. So what is it that is happening in a typical such class? So here you have in this class, there's a teacher holding up a sports kind of a section of a newspaper, and the students are basically they are students who are immigrants to Canada, and they spend around 2 hours every day, thrice a week, right, in order to learn English. So now what the teacher has done is the teacher's brought a news clipping, right, basically from the sports section, and the teacher asks certain questions and certain predictions about the World Cup, because the football World Cup is about to take place. Right? So which country is about to win? Right. So different statements that you see in the newspaper given by the reporter. France is very likely to win the next World Cup, or Spain can win if they play as well as they have lately. Germany probably won't be a contender next time. So what you notice is that out of these statements, some are more certain, right? The reporter is more certain about them. Some of them they are less certain about. Right? So then the teacher introduces a discussion about each of these predictions, right? And then after this, the teacher gives a handout to the student. So the handout is basically once again from the news clipping itself, right? The sentences are arranged in a jumbled kind of a manner. So that is unscrambling kind of an activity. Then after this, there's a guessing kind of a game, right? Certain predictions that others might have made, and then the students get to discuss this. You move from the simple to the complex, right? So predicting which team might win in the World Cup, to maybe if there's an election which is about to take place in your city, in your country, predictions about that, or if you're worried about the environment, talking about whether or not solar energy can replace fossil fuel by, say, 2050, right? So complex kind of predictions that the students have to learn to make. Now, what we will do is this small activity that I talked about, we'll take a look at what exactly is happening there, right? And what are the principles underlying, right? So this handout which has been used, why has that been used? Because it is an example of authentic language. So in communicative language teaching, authentic language, which is used in real context, that should be introduced. So merely using academic kind of language which has no connection to real life is of no use, right? So you should be using language as it is used in real life.
So now in the next step that students are asked to underline the predictions, the certain month, the most, the least certain months. So what you're doing is that when you talk about this, right, this is, you're trying to judge the speaker's intention, and this is part of being communicatively competent. So time, and again, if required, the teacher will step in, right, the third point, and give directions. You realize that the students will then try to talk about the prediction, same prediction in different words, right? Same function can be used or can be said in many different linguistic forms. That is also something to which the students are kind of introduced, right? And then the unscrambling kind of activity. So you're moving from the sentence level to the supra-sentential level, the way sentences are connected, cohesion, coherence, right? How do sentences join to form a coherent kind of a paragraph, right? And then you have a language game. So language games are usually fun, right? And they're very meaningful, right? There's a certain purpose to the exchange. And in this game, if you have made a mistake, the other person will correct you immediately, right? So you have instant kind of feedback, right? So this feedback part is something that I'll come back to later, a very important component of communicative language teaching. Now, very important to ask the students what they feel about the reporter's prediction. So see how students are involved in the classroom activity. They are made to feel important, as if they are part of whatever is happening, right? And it's not as if the teacher is just speaking and it's nothing connected to me. I have nothing to do about that, right? So as part of this, students might make errors, right? In the grammar translation method, we saw that errors were a strict no-no, absolute no-no. And the cane, the grammar translation method, was very notorious for the use of cane to hit the students whenever they committed errors. And errors were to be avoided in the grammar translation method at all costs. But here, the change is that errors are tolerated. Not only tolerated, they are seen as a natural outcome of the development of communication skills. So children learn how to pick up a language, they will commit errors. Committing errors indicates that the language acquisition process is functioning. I often use the analogy of a CPU of a computer, right? You have a tiny kind of a red light which keeps flickering as the hard disk works. So that indicates that the device is working. So similarly, errors are like these light red bulbs, which indicates that even though you might be committing errors, the process is going on, and these errors can be corrected later, right? So the errors are not to be corrected then and there, right? Because right now the focus is on fluency. They can be dealt with at a later point of time. Then you have role play, right? So any situation that you can imagine, maybe one person is the boss, other employees, right? So now when the students speak, they have to keep this in mind, right? They have to speak in a manner that is appropriate, right? Formal language. So how do you speak to your boss? How do you speak to your colleagues? How do you speak to your subordinates? Right? The use of appropriateness, right? And the role of the teacher, remember that the teacher does not kind of speak all the time. The teacher's role is that of a facilitator. So you will just help facilitate these activities. You'll be like an advisor who will be there, who will be around, who will help students when needed. The teacher will keep moving from one group to another, keep answering questions, right? And then maybe if the activity is successful, you give the students some homework, ask them about the elections that are about to take place, right? And which candidate do you think will win? Why do you think this particular candidate will win or won't win, right? So basically, you're giving the students an opportunity to use language as it will be used in authentic communication, right? So you can also coach them on how to improve their comprehension, right? Additional reading exercises that you can give to the students. Yeah. So now if we do a quick review of the principles behind communicative language teaching, right? So what is it that are the goals of the teachers here, right, who use communicative language teaching? So the goals of teachers is to ensure that these students, right, they communicate in the target language. So what is required? Knowledge of linguistic forms, meanings, functions, right? How different forms can be used for the same function, right? And out of the various forms that are available, choose the most appropriate one, right? Given the social context, right? And they should be able to manage the process of negotiating meaning, right? So communication is this process, right, where you have to keep negotiating. So this is the goal of the teachers who use CNT, right? And the teacher has to keep one thing in mind, that you will not be speaking throughout, right? So you will be more like an advisor, like a facilitator. You'll be answering the students' questions, monitoring them, maybe taking down some notes about the errors, and you could deal with them at a later point of time, right? Now, one very important characteristic of the teaching learning process is, according to Morrow, there are 3 features of any meaningful communication language teaching activity. One, there's an information gap. So for example, if I say that today is a Wednesday, everybody already knows that today is a Wednesday, right? So that's not meaningful communication. So if I say, when is Dashera, then there is an information gap. There is something that I don't know, and probably my students will tell me about that. Second, there should be an element of choice, right? So when I say that it's 11 o'clock right now, so there's no element of choice, right? But if I tell my student, how are you feeling today? Then the student might say that I'm feeling very bored, I'm feeling hungry. That element of choice is there, right? And the third, one of the most important ones, feedback, right? So whatever you say, whether the other person is able to follow that or not, right? That can be judged based on the feedback. In a typical classroom situation, we see that we pay careful attention to the way, to the expressions on the faces of the student, right? Whether they are following whatever you're saying or not, right? So that is an important component. Feedback is an important component of a communicative or a meaningful kind of a communication, right? Now, as far as the feelings of the students are also concerned, right? They are also very important, because you give them a chance to speak out, right? You ask them what do they feel. So like I mentioned earlier, the student should get this feel that they are part of whatever is going on, right? They shouldn't get this feeling that it's a disconnect. There's a disconnect between what is happening in the class and the way in which language is used outside, right? Or in the real life. Yeah. So now about language. So language becomes a medium, a tool to do something meaningful, right? Remember that there are various functions that language performs. The instrumental function, you can progress in life with the use of language, right? You'll be, if you're good at language, most of the students will be good in academics. They'll succeed in their professional life. They'll be successful in life too. Right. So now, how do you incorporate this in class, right? Bringing in authentic kind of material, right? And also at times you can use various festivals. You can talk about the cultural aspects. What do you feel about this particular thing, right? Students can talk about their cultural kind of even prejudices for that matter, right? Here you'll be focusing on not just on linguistic competence, right? Question number 7. But more importantly, you will be talking about the notion of communicative competence, using language in a socially appropriate manner given the social kind of context, right? So when you do this, you will be making use of all 4 skills, L, S, R, W, right? Maybe for writing, you need explicit kind of activities, but otherwise you'll be listening all the time. Right? You'll be reading whatever is shown to you. You'll be speaking. You'll be communicating. Right? So you get a chance to make use of all of the 4 different skills. Now, when it comes to the role of native language, right? So maybe a judicious use of the L1, the students L1 can be made use of, but in a very judicious is the operative word here, right? Only to explain things and make it as simple as possible, right? Or when you give them homework, if you want to make it as simple as possible, probably you make use of the students L1, right? And evaluation, basically, remember that you're talking about not just the student's accuracy, not just the grammatical part of it, right? But fluency. One important aspect of communicative language teaching is that there's a shift of focus from grammatical accuracy to comprehension, right? To intelligibly. So if the student ends up committing errors which are minor in nature, which do not affect the intelligibility of whatever they're saying, that's okay. You can overlook them. You can make a note of that and maybe deal with them at a later point of time. Right? So that important change in your attitude as a teacher has to be brought in here. Right? And now, if you take a quick look at the techniques that are made use of, authentic materials. So what are authentic materials? Basically genuine materials, right, which reflect the way language is used in real life. It could be a laboratory journal, right? How to perform a particular experiment. It could be a newspaper cutting. It could be maybe some instructional manual that comes with your telephone, right, or with your mobile phone, whatever, right? So these are examples of authentic kind of materials. Then at a lower level, maybe you can include menus which in a restaurant, for example, which have little or the language component is relatively lesser, right? Depending on the current level of the students, right? And then you have scrambled sentences, something that we discussed earlier, right? Teaching cohesion, coherence, and many such things. Language games also, role play. All of these are very interesting kind of activities which make it fun, right? Language has to be made fun. It should not be a boring, monotonous kind of an exercise which the students are scared of. Sadly, I must say this, that English is made out to be something very difficult, something very extraordinary, or something which we cannot master. English is a skill-based language like any other language. It's just like learning how to ride a bicycle, right? You need to know the basics. Given the right kind of exposure, you can pick up any language, right? So students need to be made aware of this, right? And for this, I think these techniques come in very handy, right? So this marks the end of the first major area that I wanted to talk about, communicative language teaching. Now we move on to the second one, that is content-based instruction or content-based language teaching. These terms can be used alternatively. So here there is this notion of strong version of communicative approach and weak version. So basically, both CLT as well as content-based approach, they are examples of the strong version, right? Where the teaching goes beyond giving students opportunities to practice communication. How do you do that? Through communication itself. How do you teach communication? Through communication itself, not in a theoretical manner, right? And in a weak version, you can give them grammatical rules. You can a typical traditional kind of a grammar where they memorize the rules, they learn how to use it, and then you give them certain situations, right? So a strong version, basically, it entails using language to learn, right? Using English to learn. Now, why are we talking about this? Because this particular aspect where both content-based instruction and task-based learning language teaching, they prioritize communicating over predetermined linguistic content teaching through communication rather than foreign, right? So you don't teach a language so that students can merely memorize grammatical rules, the language part of it. You teach language by sort of making them use language. And the key distinction about key distinction between knowing about a language and knowing a language, right? So as language teachers, we often make this distinction. So that is, I think, very relevant here. Yeah. So as is the case with most academic kind of issues, there's a lot of controversy about whether content-based teaching and task-based teaching, should they be called as methods? Should they be called as syllabus types? So there are differing kind of views. Some educators feel that they should be referred to as syllabus type, but there are others like Snow and Kumara Vedivelu who feel that using the designation of a method is more appropriate. right? We'll skip that part. The last two lines I think are important. If students learn to communicate by communicating, then the destination and the route become one and the same, right? So in a sense, that is the ultimate aim. We want our students to be able to speak or use language effectively, right? So the common link between both these views is that both are they are based on the same assumption that students learn to communicate by communicating. Now, what is the rationale? What is the logic behind content-based instruction? So this is not really a new kind of idea, right? This idea has been around for since a very long time, right? You have what is known as English for specific purposes. So English for maybe doctors would be different from English for pilots, right? So basically, you are teaching in ESP, you're teaching them to at least master that limited jargon of their particular domain, right? In academics, for example, you have English for academic purposes, how to write essays, how to maybe answer questions, essay type questions, right? So all that is part of EAP. So that is the fundamental, the basic logic of content-based education. Nothing very new about it. But what is unique about it? Now, what is unique about content-based learning? It is not exclusively a language program. But what does it do? It integrates the learning of language with the learning of some other content. So what is that content? It could be themes, popular music, sports, right? The key is to choose something which the students would find interesting. It can also be academic matters, because academic matters teach a lot to the students, right? Geography, we see this example of geography. The reason why this particular approach gained popularity is that there was a movement, language across the curriculum, going beyond the curriculum, right? So you see that in the American kind of context, there was a very peculiar kind of a problem, right? What I've referred to as problem number one. So when English language learners were put in regular school classes with native speakers, some ELLs did not master either content or English. Now, the second problem is that when they studied English first, the study of academic content was delayed. So their focus would be on English as a language, and maybe the academic part got delayed. So in order to solve this problem, instructors teach academic subjects like history or science, while also teaching the language that is related to the content. So in a sense, language becomes the medium for learning content. Let's see how this is made possible. In the European context, you use this term called CLIL, Content and Language Integrated Learning. Right? So what is that? As per Marsh, it is any dual focus educational context in which an additional language, not usually the first language of the learners, is used as a medium in the teaching and learning of non-language content. So in Germany, for example, where German would be the L1, the use of English to teach something like, say, geography. Now, there are two things that you have to keep in mind, a note of caution, right? So if English is not your L1, it is important to first establish literacy in their native language before learning to read and write another language. Second, you have to focus on what the students already know, right? And build on that knowledge. And that is how you develop a program which meets their needs. So it is not the case that the earlier the better when it comes to language instruction. Start it as early as possible. Nowadays we see this trend where the students are kind of put into kindergartens and nursery schools as early as 3 years, right? Based on the faulty notion that the earlier you introduce them to maybe schools, the faster they will progress, right? That's a highly debatable kind of issue. Okay, so now if you are a language teacher who's making use of content-based language teaching, so you need clear-cut language objectives as well as content learning objectives, right? So if you're teaching mathematics, something like a quadratic equation, so you talk about how students will solve this quadratic equation. You focus on verbs like solve, discuss, write, right? And at the same time, you need an outcome from the mathematical point of view also. So when you're focusing on verbs, that is just the step one. You will have to also talk about language objectives like vocabulary, the right kind of words that you use, the structure, and the discourse level organization, suprasentential level, right? You'll have to focus on all of that. Now, let's take a look at one sample content based kind of a class, right? So if you have to, maybe you're teaching geography here, right? And in a typical classroom in an international school in Taipei, for example, students are studying geography and English combined, right, through content-based instruction. So many of these students are Chinese speakers. Some of them speak Korean, right? English proficiency is not very great. It is at a low or intermediate level. Now, what does the teacher do? The teacher introduces a globe and asks what the globe is. What is this object? So some of them will say world, right? Not all might be familiar with the correct word for that globe. Maybe the teacher will keep the globe on the table and then ask questions, right? What is this? So then the students will come up with the answers. The teacher goes to the board, keeps recording the answers, right? And when the students have some problem, the teacher will supply the missing kind of language, right? Then she'll give a handout, understanding globes. Now this handout is linked to video, which the teacher will show later, right? And this handout has a lot of vocabulary kind of items, right? Degree, distance, equator, globe, hemisphere, imaginary, latitude, longitude, model, parallel, right? Then you have what is known as a closed passage. As language teachers, we must be aware that there is something called kind of a closed passage, right? Closed passage, CLOZE, right? I'll just read out one example of a sample closed passage. A dash is a three-dimensional dash of the Earth. Points of interest are located on a globe by using a system of dashed lines, right? So there are fill in the blanks, which the students have to kind of fill in based on their understanding, right? Now the video is played. After the video is over, the students are expected to fill in the remaining kind of answers, right? So you have verbs like located, are called. So basically, in this, the teacher is teaching something like present passive, right? Active voice, passive voice. How in the passive voice the focus is taken away from the action, from the doer of the action, right? Then certain concepts like latitude, longitude, right? And how a city has particular coordinates, right? Where Mumbai, for example, or Delhi, right? And then you, using the globe, you ask the students to find out where is this particular city located, what are its coordinates, latitude, longitude, right? So a guessing kind of a game. And then you have what is known as a dictogloss activity. You read out a paragraph once or twice. The first time round, you make them pay attention to the main ideas. The second time round, you ask them to focus on additional kind of items, right? Then after that, the students will share whatever they've understood from the reading, right? So this is a typical kind of a content-based activity. Now, once again, the same pattern. Let's take a look at what is happening here, right? The class is studying geography through the target language, English. So the content as well as the language, both are targets of learning. So the students are learning geography. At the same time, they're learning English also, right? And then when they are asked about it, what do they know about the globe? So you are building on the previous knowledge. Some of the children might say that it is a circle or it is the world, right? And if they miss something, you have to provide it. The role of a scaffolding, right? The scaffolding in a building, right? And then whatever the students say, you write it out on the board. The students feel happy, right? Yes, whatever I've said has been written on the stage, right? So that element of motivation, right? Then various coordinates that they are given about latitude and longitude. So this activity becomes meaningful, right? Instead of just saying that this is the definition of latitude, longitude, right? Rather than doing that, you make them involved, get them to participate in this activity, right? It demands some element of participation on part of the student. And this material is authentic kind of material. The task is also very authentic kind of a task, right? So this is where the dictogloss kind of comes in handy. And maybe then you can give them some homework, ask them to look up certain cities, towns, right? And find out the geographical coordinate. Now, what exactly are the principles that are operating here, right? So the goal, the teachers want the students to master both target language, English, as well as the academic content, right? And all this should happen simultaneously. So the teacher has to set up clear clear-cut kind of objectives. At the end of this lesson, nowadays, outcome-based education is a buzzword in NAC and IQAC circles, right? So what is the outcome? At the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify cities with the help of coordinates, right? So that is the outcome maybe. So now, what are the characteristics of this teaching learning process? You're making use of authentic kind of text, right? So authentic text, the material that you use will be different in say in case of mathematics, in case of a history class, in case of a geography kind of class, right? The students also get to interact with each other. They get to talk with each other. So their feelings are also kind of taken into account. So that degree of collaboration, right? And when they collaborate, you see that it's a fun activity that keeps them very, very motivated, right? And language becomes an important tool through which content is conveyed, right? Then as far as skills are concerned, you can make use of all 4 skills here. In this particular method or approach, the native language of the student, the L1, does not really have any major role, right? And errors might not be corrected immediately. The teacher will make note of it and correct it at a later kind of point. Or you give them a chance. You repeat the sentence. You give them a chance to kind of self-correct, right? So that is also possible. Yeah. Now the conclusion, not just not of my overall speak. There's one or two units that we'll take a look at. Basically, what is it that you're doing in content based instruction? You are you're offering a way, right? Offers teachers a way of addressing issues of language and content learning both at the same time, and the students can make progress in both, right? And this can be very, very efficient, right? Any one aspect will not be left behind. I mean, if you focus on English, geography, or mathematics, won't be left behind. Both will happen at the same time, right? So this can provide the required kind of motivation, right? And they can make use of this at a later stage also whenever they go to college or university, right? So this is the second major aspect that I wanted to talk about. And the third and probably the last, because we barely have another 10 more minutes or so, where we'll wrap up the task-based language teaching. I think we'll have to skip the theory of multiple intelligences. Now, I've talked about 2 different syllabi. Synthetic, where you synthesize linguistic units like grammar, structures, vocabulary, right? And your role as a learner is to synthesize all of these things for the purpose of communication. Now, on the other hand, analytical syllabi is organized based on the purpose for which you make use of that of these constituent elements, right? So learning language and the kinds of language performance that are necessary to meet those purposes. Both content-based instruction as well as task-based syllabus can be considered as examples of analytical syllabi. Now, here we make use of tasks, right? Meaningful kind of tasks, which when the students perform these tasks, they will start communicating, right? And they have a very clear-cut kind of outcome. So you know whether if you're asked to go to the bank, right, and open a bank account, so you need to go and ask certain questions, right, and fulfill all the formalities. Only if you're able to do that, you succeed. If not, the feedback is available to you instantly. Another example could be drawing up the itinerary for a trip, right? You have a train timetable, right? The destination, various routes that are possible. Students can discuss all of that, right? So interaction takes place. Now, a very important statement made by Canlin and Murphy, that the central purpose of language learning and the task present this in the form of a problem-solving negotiation, right? Between the knowledge that the learner holds, the knowledge that I have now, and new knowledge. So I think Stephen Krashen has also talked about the theory of comprehensible input, I+1, right? What kind of input should you give to the students? If I is the current level of knowledge, I+1, right? So the next point is about task-based syllabi and task-based language teaching. Some experts feel that they are different. In a task-based syllabi, typically grammatical items are usually absent, but not always so. We'll skip that for now. right? But basically the focus is on making use of tasks, right? Now, how does that help us? Let's take a look at a sample task-based kind of a class, right? So here you can see a picture, a typical Indian kind of a classroom where you have around 40 students, out of which a group of 4 or 5 is seen in the picture, right? And the teacher enters the class and says, today we are going to do a lesson on timetables, okay? And then columns and rows, you write down the first lecture, timing of the first lecture, 9:30 to 10:15. The student understand that this is the duration. And then the teacher asks, what should I write here? And then the students mention the timing, right? 10:15 to 11 o'clock and so on and so forth. Then on the right hand, you call a student and ask them to write the names of the for the days of the week, right? One by one. And students participate very enthusiastically. And then do we have class on Saturday? Students say no, weekend. Then the teacher corrects it and says, Saturday is on the weekend, Saturday is a weekend day. Then the teacher asks, when you're putting in the lectures there, how many of you like to study English? Then the students reply about their feelings, right? And then you divide the work among small groups, right? And then you give them the week schedule on cards. You get them to discuss it with each others, right? With each other. Even if the students make errors, it's okay. Just keep noting them down, and they can be corrected at a later point in time, right? So see that in this timetable activity, there's a very clear-cut purpose, a clear-cut kind of outcome, right? And the teacher begins by taking the help of the students, a collaborative kind of activity. And there's a certain logic that is involved here, right? Language is also used while answering these questions, right? And what the teacher is doing is breaking down the activity into smaller parts. Just the timing at one go, then the days of the week, then the lectures, right? So in a step-by-step graded kind of a manner, which is also in keeping with the principles of psychology, right? So when you ask them whether a particular answer is right, then the students will think about it, whether it's correct or not, then they'll negotiate the meaning, they'll answer, right? So all of them get a chance to speak about it. Do we have school on Saturday, right? So the teacher doesn't consciously simplify his language. Whenever a complete statement would be required for comprehension, you have to do that, right? And then sometimes you'll switch to a yes-no question, because yes-no questions are easier to answer. So the switching is a natural kind of a strategy which proficient users use while interacting with less proficient speakers inside and outside of the classroom. As teachers, we also keep doing that regularly, right? So you talk about the schedule. The students know this is how the timetable is to be drafted, right? Then you give them certain tasks where they have to put together the information, right? So they interact with each other, talk to each other. Errors are okay, right? Then maybe they get feedback that the way in which you have done their job properly, or maybe you could have done it in a slightly different way, right? So this is how the task-based activity is carried out. Now, here you see that the students are making use of language for doing it, right? For communicating. At the same time, the teacher's role that you see here is very similar to the earlier one, right? But you have to be very careful. Choose the right kind of input based on the current level of comprehension, and I+1, right? And then set a clear-cut outcome for the task, right? Then this task proceeds in a particular sequence, right? That is an important characteristic here. The third point, right? What are the linguistic parts that will be used to maybe understand that particular task? How do you go about it, right? And then at the end of it, what will you achieve, right? Students, the teacher's role is that of an input provider. The teacher pays attention to what is happening, and maybe the teacher will reformulate the sentence as and when required. Right? And the students get a chance to make use of all the 4 skills. Native language is usually not used, and evaluation can be done based on whether the task is completed or not. Right? Project work, I think, is another good way that can be used. Right? Give them a project like publishing a school newspaper. Right? And you can do that in 3 steps. So one step would be in class discussing what is required. Step number 2 would be to go out and then gather information, and then come back to the teacher and then kind of see whether you've done a proper job or not. So the last point that I'll make here, and I think after that we'll stop. Task-based language teaching challenges mainstream views about language teaching in that it is based on the principle that language learning will progress most successfully if teaching aims simply to create context in which learners' natural language learning capacity can be nurtured rather than making a systematic attempt to teach the language bit by bit. Right? So this, I think, is one of the key aspects of task-based learning. So to recap, what we did is we undertook took a look at the brief history of language teaching, the background to communicative language teaching, content-based language teaching, and task-based language teaching. Three major methods. I think we'll skip multiple intelligences for now. So I hand it over back to Dr. Kamble or Dr. Agrawal, and we can take questions if there is some time for that. Thank you, once again for giving me a chance.
Thank you, sir, for your and neat presentation. Now, I would like to request participants for questions, if any. Yes. Dr. Shubhangi Lendave, please. Lendave, ma'am. Yes. Sir, I had a question. At the primary level, when as we are teachers, we are teaching on undergraduate level, BA first, BCom first, BSc first. What should be our priority? Content-based or grammar-based teaching? What do you think about it? Yes.
Okay. Can I answer this question?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So first, of course, given the fact that most of our colleges are typically affiliated to universities where the university decides the syllabus, there are certain inherent restrictions on what we can do or what we cannot. But there is nothing to stop us from kind of integrating such authentic materials into our classroom activities as and when possible. So I think that would involve some extra kind of work. If it is science students, for example, bringing in some authentic material from scientific journals or from science books, right, which they would encounter in as part of their academic kind of studies, right, and incorporating that into the language teaching part. So making it more interesting. I think that is something for which, if we take some extra efforts, that would be very, very satisfying. And personally, my experience has been that science students typically do not take language very seriously, right? You have to make it interesting for them. And by incorporating authentic material, task-based activity, I think we can definitely do that. I hope that it answers some part of your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think Gire ma'am wants to ask something. Savita Gire.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, sir, I have one question. बेटा सर थोड़ा सा मे बी नेटवर्क इशू है, एक मिनट.
Unmute your mic, ma'am, and start. Yes.
Sir, I want to know to study challenges faced by the college and university teacher and student when integrating of the ICT classroom technology, hardware and software.
Challenges. She wants to ask about the challenges before colleges. Sir.
Yeah. Yeah. So Challenges would be on multiple levels. One of the things that we talked about, appropriateness, right? Like Rashan puts it, the theory of comprehensible input. So choosing the right kind of material which would go well with your classroom, right? So for that, maybe a simple diagnostic test would be in order. Conducting a diagnostic test to check the current level of the students when it comes to the 4 skills, and then locating the right kind of material. Also checking their knowledge, their interest. You could circulate a certain questionnaire. This is something that we did when we designed the syllabus in Ferguson College Autonomous, right? I was involved more with the compulsory English part as well as criticism. So circulating questionnaires, finding out more about what is it that the students want, what is it, or a change in methodology, and then incorporating that into our classroom teaching within the given constraints, of course.
Thank you, sir. I also want to know the difference between traditional classroom and ICT classroom in English language. In COVID pandemic, we are also use ICT classroom, online classroom, Google Classroom. I want to know different traditional classroom where we to taught in
traditional classroom and ICT ELT classroom, English language teaching classroom. What do you think, sir?
Yeah. So I think that we have been forced to make use of the online format during the pandemic period because we didn't have a choice, right? Now this whole notion of whether ICT can be a proper substitute to traditional classroom teaching, right? We all, as language teachers, we already knew that audiovisual aids and ICT they can be an additional, a complementary kind of a tool. They can never substitute the classroom teacher, right? So I think at best ICT can play a complementary kind of a role, but then there are a lot of drawbacks, right? Given the disparity, a lot of students face connectivity issues. At the same time, teachers have no way of knowing whether the students are actually listening to their lecture or not, right? But it is up to the teacher's creativity to give them some homework, some additional kind of exercises, and to see to take the classroom out of the typical kind of a format and maybe continue the activity at home also, right? That would mean putting a lot of hard work about understanding the current requirements of your students and then gathering the required kind of material, working on it. Internet kind of makes things easier. You get a lot of good material available on the net, so that can be put to good use, right? But then as and when we go back to traditional classroom, ICT will still be used, but it will be in a complementary mode. I think it can never replace the traditional classroom or the teacher for that matter.
Thank you very much, sir.
Now, without wasting time, for the presidential remarks, I would like to invite Dr. Sanjay Dixit, Professor and IQAC Coordinator, Mudhoji College, Paltan. Dixit, sir, please.
Yes. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes. At the very outset, let me congratulate and thank all the honorable office bearers of Chhatrapati Shivaji Shikshan Mandal, Vaduz, the principal Dr. S.B. Patil, as well as the faculty members of the Department of English, Dada Saheb Jyotiram Godse, Arts and Commerce College, Vaduz, as well as all the office bearers of ELTAI Satara for organizing such a nice academic event. It is my honor to be here as the chairperson of this keynote address. I thank and congratulate my friend Dr. Shardul Thakur also for a very nice, systematic, well-planned presentation, which was well supported by proper examples. Dr. Thakur, in fact, the tone of this academic event was set by Professor Agarwal's view in the very beginning that do we feel teaching language or grammar to be a hurdle in the way of teaching language? And I think Dr. Thakur has tried to answer all the queries that were started by Professor Agarwal In fact, Agarwal is just a representative. All of feel that most of the people, even teachers also, to whom English is not a mother tongue, it is either EL2 or EL3. And we feel, because we are also product of the same system, and we do feel that grammar is the hurdle in the way of language teaching. Dr. Thakur has tried to answer all the queries and the questions. He discussed 4 major areas: communicative language teaching, content-based instruction, it is a good way of teaching, task-based language teaching, and the last one that he didn't mention elaborately, multiple intelligence. In fact, he referred many scholars, he gave many examples, and he tried to explain that teacher has to, even we teachers has to think about the way what we are going to do in our classroom, that the traditional way of, he took a brief survey of the teaching of English language in India as well as all over the world. And he came to the present scenario, present situation, and he made the remark that a teacher has to be a facilitator. A teacher has to be a facilitator. And I think that is a very, very important remark. Communication is the prime focus all over the world today, and teachers have to find out a golden mean in between the theory as well as the practice, and taking into account the context of the classroom as well as the students who are in my class. I have to plan my teaching accordingly. He used a very, very important term, that a teacher has to make judicious use of methods while teaching, and that is very important. I think as Professor Thakur quoted, that the destination and the route of the journey, both for the teachers and for the student, the teacher has to think about it. In conclusion, he said that teacher has to nurture the learner's natural learning capacity instead of giving grammatical patterns. In fact, they are also very important, but the focus has now changed, and we have to take into account the changed scenario. And I think Dr. Thakur has tried to do justice in the best possible manner. In fact, there were many doubts among teachers also. Dr. Thakur has directly or indirectly, even though there were just 1 or 2 questions from the participant, many of us had the same questions in our minds, and Dr. Thakur has tried to answer all of them. And I find that Dr. Thakur's presentation was very useful to teachers, the student, and even a teacher like me also, that we have to do certain experiments. That when I came into the service 26 years ago, the scenario at that time and the scenario at present has changed totally, and even teachers like me, we have to change and think and plan our teaching as per the changed scenario. I congratulate Dr. Thakur, and also thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. Over to Professor Kamble.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presidential remarks. Really, we are indebted to you. You accepted our invitation for chairing the session. Immediately, you accepted it. There was a problem. Now, I would like to request Dr. Lakshman Jathar, Head Department of English, Maini College, Maini, to offer vote of thanks. Jathar sir, please.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Good morning to all. I am Dr. Lakshman Jathar. I am here to say vote of thanks. Honorable Dr. Shardul Thakur, Associate Professor and Head of English Department, Chandra Mandal Commerce College, Sangli,
delivered his keynote address on approaches to the teaching of English language. The keynote address delivered by him was an intellectual feast for us. Initially, he took survey of English, history of English language teaching. Then he discussed 4 methods of teaching, such as communicative language teaching, then content-based introduction, task-based language teaching. In his presentation, he thoroughly discussed the psychological relationship between the students and teacher in teaching learning process. He advised to teach language, making students to make use of language there. He discussed the different areas of language in which it is to be used there. These methods will be helpful for us in our teaching learning process also. He also discussed which teaching methods when to use also there. Another thing he discussed on the challenges in language teaching there. I am heartily thankful to Dr. Shardul Thakur, sir, for delivering this intellectual feast and enlightening us. I would also like to thank Honorable Dr. Sanjay Dikshit, sir, for chairing this keynote address session. Lastly, my warm thanks to all the participants who enjoyed this session as intellectual feast and interactive question answer session also there. I also thankful to all the organizers who organized this national webinar. Once again, I am thankful to all. Thanks.
Thank you, Zatar sir. Now we are going to commence plenary session first. In this session, we have Dr. Nyandev Kale as resource person, Dr. Manisha Patil as chairperson. Without testing your patience, I would like to call Dr. Vaijanti Otari, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Rahmatpur College, Rahmatpur, to introduce the speaker and chairperson. Otari ma'am, please.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, good morning to all. On behalf of ELT English India Satara chapter, I welcome all participants, and on behalf of participants, I congratulate organizers for organizing such a wonderful webinar. The chairperson of this today's second session, Dr. Manisha Patil, an associate professor, head, Department of English at YC Institute of Science, Satara. She has completed her schooling from Anna Saheb Kalyani High School, Satara, Masters from Goa University, as well as PhD from University of Mysore in comparative literature. She has edited 5 books, published 15 research papers, and amongst 8 research papers she presented abroad. She visited 17 countries for academic purpose. She completed 3 research projects and 1 research project is undergoing. She's expertise in second language acquisition, comparative cultural studies, drama, creative writing, and translation studies. On her credit, there are many awards. A few of them are Summer School Scholarship from France in 2019, ELT Research Partnership Award in October 2015. Then she also received travel grant in July 2013. She is very scholar and research oriented. In the same, I'm very proud to say that both stalwarts, both of them, Dr. Kale as well as Manisha Patil, both of them are devoted to ELT and help students as well as faculty to acquire English language. The experts today is Dr. Nyandev Kale, an assistant professor and head, Department of English, Amdar Shashikant Shinde Mahavidyalay, Meda. She has been working as a assistant professor for 15 years. He completed UG and PG from Mudoji College, Fulton, MPhil from Pune University, and PhD from Shivaji University, Kolhapur. He is also a research guide in English at Shivaji University, Kolhapur. His area of interest is English language teaching. He has completed minor research project. And most importantly, as all of we know him, that he is a convener of ELT chapter, Satara chapter. Kale sir has published 18 articles. He is author of 2 books. Apart from this, both of these scholars are down to earth, very cooperative, very helpful, and I'm sure that their session will be very wonderful and helping to us. Thank you. Thank you for this brief introduction.
Thank you, Otari ma'am. We all know Dr. Kade and his lucid language. He who gathered us all in the single umbrella of ILTAI Satara chapter. Dr. Nyandev Kade, I request him to share his delicious feast of knowledge with us. Kade sir, please.
Thank you, Sachin. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm really thankful to Otari ma'am for introducing me so nicely. And I'm really honored because most of my teachers are around me right now. They are sitting at different places, and I am supposed to make one more presentation before them. I request them not to evaluate it because evaluation, I'm not sure what would it result in. But thank you so much. I'm really thankful to Sachin and Professor Agarwal for inviting me here and insisting that I should talk here. I should have my talk on my favorite area, no grammar approach. Just before me, it was Professor Shardul Thakur. He's my teacher, and I feel proud that most of the takeaways of his lecture would be repeated here once again. But yes, I would try to have my own area here. So maybe I have already borrowed a lot from him. Maybe some more things would be shared here again. So I take his permission, and with the permission of all my teachers, I share my screen. And I would like to make a brief presentation on whatever topic has been assigned to me. Okay, today I am supposed to talk about no grammar approach to English language teaching. So far as my knowledge goes, people are often bothered about grammar, but nobody speaks about how to go without it. And I'm one of those lucky teachers to have experience of dealing with English as a language without doing with the grammar. And I did it on the basis of experiments in the classroom. I have been experimenting because this is what lacks in the English classrooms. And Professor Thakur, who has been who was my ELT teacher, I would say he has been my ELT teacher. He would agree with me that people are there who really hesitate to teach grammar because it bothers students particularly a lot, and many of the teachers are not conversant with it. They are not, that much friendly with grammar, yet they have to deal with grammar, and that is something that I have challenged. Now here at the outset, let me ask you all 2 questions. The first question is, how many of us really know the grammar of our first language, the mother tongue? Professor Thakur referred to it as L1, first language, L1. How many of us, most of us are Marathi speakers? I'm really doubtful about your competence in the grammar of Marathi. So just don't post any answers. Just think what your answer is. Be intuitive and try to answer your questions on your own. Second thing, even this question had a passing reference in Professor Thakur's presentation. What do we teach in our English classrooms? Is it English language or is it about English language? Now, these are the two questions which have often bothered me, because when I look back, when I recapitulate and look back at my schoolings, my school teachers were very good. I mean, really very good at grammar, and they taught me by heart, and I learned them by heart. But I don't know what happened, but I was unable to speak English even when I ended up with my PG MA from Modern College Shivaji Nagar, Pune. And I was not that confident about talking in English. I often fumbled and took a lot of time to speak out, and so many hesitations were there. Will I make some mistakes? Will there be any problem? Will someone laugh at me? What kind of mistakes are there? I was unable to identify them. And that is where I have come across these two questions. Now, this led me to basic deliberation that what does it mean to learn a language? When I say I am using a language or I know a language, what does it mean? It means a lot of things for me. The first thing is, when I know English, I simply mean that when I know English, I understand. Okay. I request all the
Please, Shubham
participants to
Dake, mute yourself. And Rahul Watade, you have to mute yourself.
Okay. So when I say I know a language, it simply means I understand the language when it is spoken. Apart from that, yeah, I'm able to speak that language. I mean, whenever there is a situation in which I'm supposed to speak, I'm able to speak it. Then when I say I know that language, I'm able to read and understand and interpret whatever is written. That is, I know the script of that language and I can reproduce it. That is, I can write it. To be very simple, these are the 4 language skills that we often speak about: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. But is it sufficient? And how do we achieve it? And for this, I have 2 more questions. The first question is, which skills of your mother tongue did you master without any special tutoring? We all are, not all, but most of us are Marathi speakers. Now, my question is, which of these 4 skills, I mean, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, did you master without any special teaching? Nobody taught you these skills, yet you mastered them. Answers are obvious, and please keep them up with yourself. Second question is it possible to teach English the way we learned our mother tongue? Now, even this issue has been passingly touched by Professor Thakur. Is it possible, really possible, to teach English the way we teach Marathi? Because most of us are Marathi speakers. So, is it possible for us to master English the way we mastered Marathi? Now, just keep these questions. The thing is, there are several issues at stake, and I would like to discuss them one by one. The first and foremost is there are so many rumors about English, that English is a difficult language. English is a language with so many irregularities in spellings and pronunciation, and the grammar of English is quite complicated. You can have a sentence of 2 words, and you can have a sentence of around maybe unending words, innumerable words. You cannot restrict it to any end. But we have been often, even before we enter classrooms, we have been often bothered by our seniors that English is a pretty difficult language and one needs so many things to mug up and so many things to master, then only it's quite difficult to master the language. Why? I'm not sure. And in addition to this, I've been researching primary and secondary levels for teaching English. And recently, I have come across some parents who have been talking about English, and their opinion is now the government introduced English from the standard first from 1999. Now it's more than 22 years of teaching English at the primary level, and even after learning English for 12 or more years, students are not able to speak English. They are not able to write English. Why is it so? It simply means that English is comparatively a difficult language, that they don't think about what goes on in the background, what goes on in the classroom, but they have this popular notion that English is quite difficult language. Now, the second thing is teacher competencies in English. I'm damn sure about the teacher competencies. I mean, teachers' lacuna, their efforts, their competencies. No doubt that there are several teachers who are competent enough to handle English as a language. They go for English as a language, not as a subject. That is what Professor Agarwal pointed out, that English is taught as a subject, not as a language, and that is where the problem is. Most of us our teachers, I mean primary and secondary teachers, they don't use English in the classrooms, and that is where the problem incurs. Students don't get adequate exposure to English language, and that is where the problem comes. And we fail that because of shortage of exposure, students are not able to master the language the way they should have been, and that's the problem with teachers. Availability of material, yeah, this is, and this was, I would let me say, this was a serious problem say before 1.5 years, because apart there was material to the perusal of students, and students had to depend only on books and their teachers. Apart from that, those were the guides that they got in the market. So apart from that, there was hardly any material. Today, because of this online mode, there are so much material available on internet. YouTube is full of videos on English, this aspect of English, that aspect of English, and so many things are available. The problem is how much of it is a quality material that can be directly used for classroom teaching or for learning that language, English. Again, the social background, we all are familiar with the kind of background students come from. India is a culturally there is a lot of variety of culture in India, and apart from culture, we have social background like caste system is there, class system is there, urban areas are there, rural areas are there, hilly areas are there, and apart from that, economic background also matters a lot. We are quite familiar with these problems because we have been teaching. And the last one is parent competencies in English. This point came to my mind only because of the crop of English medium and convent schools which is there right now across India. Every single day, some approval to given to some school somewhere in some corner of India. And now there are so many English medium schools. Everybody wants, every parent want their child to go to some English medium school and master English language. The problem is that comes again is with teacher competencies, and how many of these parents are able to help their children to master the content and master the language. Because most of the parents, even I am a teacher of English, I often go home and many a times my daughters ask me some questions. I know I'm a teacher of English, I can solve some of their problems related to English, but when it comes to mathematics, I fail. Then I have to go back to some book and read it and understand it and explain it to my children. thank God that I know English very well, and not very well, but I know English, and I can explain it quite beautifully to them. Beautifully in the sense they can understand whatever I explain. So in that sense, so these are the issues that we need to take into account before we go to. Now, when I again, the same question which I had posed some time ago, what does it mean to know a language? To my perception, knowing a language means three things. The first thing is minimum adequate vocabulary. When I know that, when I say I know this language, I can use certain set of words for communicative purposes. Professor Thakur spoke about communicative language teaching, and there the basic intention is to be able to communicate. Now, communication, formal communication and informal communication, these things have been classified already. But here, for that purpose, I need certain words, certain sets of words, and that is exactly what I call minimum adequate vocabulary, because nobody in the world knows all the words in a dictionary. It's impossible for individual. So at least I should have a workable set, a set of words which could be used time and again for communicating effectively the way it is expected to be. And that set is minimum adequate vocabulary. The second thing is minimum adequate pronunciation. Now, I believe that whatever I am saying could be understood easily by everybody, because my pronunciation is normal neutralized tone. There are some people who speak in received pronunciation, but there are few more, or I would say there are so many around us who speak with the native tongue interference, native language interference, and because of that, they could, their pronunciation, it sounds quite irritating or something like that. But yes, when the best solution to this is, when I say minimum adequate pronunciation, I simply means that your pronunciation should be acceptable. Acceptable, it should be acceptable in the sense whatever you say would be adjusted by the listener and would be understood by him or her. And the last point is minimum adequate grammar. Now the point of grammar has come, so let me begin with my last question. What is grammar? Now this question is somehow related to the previous questions. Do we teach English language, or do we teach about English language? So it is here that my argument begins, and let me define grammar before I proceed with. So let me define grammar before I proceed. I define grammar as acceptable word order in a sentence. Whether you accept this or not, I'm not sure. Whether you like it or not, I don't bother right now. But I am hopeful that you would be able to think about it and put up your opinion, and maybe we can have some discussion about that. So here, let me begin with my presentation on no grammar approach. What is no grammar approach? It's a set of techniques used for teaching a language. Obviously, all the approaches so far discussed were grammar translation method, then a direct method, bilingual method, audiolingual method, structural approach, situational approach, communicative approach, total physical response, content-based instructions, task-based language teaching, multiple intelligences. These are the things which are getting added to the sets of methods and approaches to English language teaching. Here now, I'm going to talk about no grammar approach. So, like most of the others, even I have a set of techniques that can be used for teaching English language, and Those are simple techniques applicable to learners of all age groups. My approach does not restrict to any classroom as such. Any person of any age group can learn English using this approach. How? That we will discuss later. But it is applicable to all classrooms, all languages. And let me tell you that this cannot be restricted only to English language teaching. It can be used for teaching other languages like Marathi, English. The only thing is I don't have experience of pictorial languages like Japanese and Chinese. So I don't assure you about those languages. But yes, all those languages which are, Indo-Germanic languages, like those, wherever such languages are used, this approach can be used for teaching that language. Third one is, I have strictly prohibited formal teaching of rules of grammar because I've been working on this for last more than 15 years. And I have been discussing this with experts, and many of them came up with the argument that if you suddenly stop teaching grammar, what would teachers do? What can they do? And my response to them was, what they do is their own business. I cannot interfere with them. What I can do and what I recommend and suggest is no teaching of grammar. So I don't allow the users of no grammar approach to teach formal rules of grammar. Then, but as I have already put it up, we need words, and with words, learning words, memorizing words is an intrinsic part of even no grammar approach. Rather, I would say a no grammar approach begins with learning words, and from there we can proceed with. But here my deliberation is not like others. I often suggest that words should be used in the sentences in particular context, and we should train the teachers to use those words in the sentences. This will help them to construct sentences. Once they can construct sentences, they means learners. We can proceed with many other things. This enables students to frame their own sentences. The techniques that we are about to start with, all of them are so easy and so handy that anybody with so-so knowledge of English language can start framing some sentences. They can make sentences and use them as and when they are demanded. And the last one is, use of first language is an intrinsic part of this approach. See, the medium of instruction in no grammar approach is nothing else but your mother tongue. Whatever first language the learners are familiar with, or whatever is their first language, the instructor, the teacher should use that language for giving all the instructions while using no grammar approach. Now, why? Rules bothers us a lot. There are so many arguments, I can talk about them in details. Rules waste a lot of our time. Rules are taught, but their application is missed. And this is a serious problem with the previous approaches, because in grammar translation method, content is translated and we understand the content. The problem is grammar is taught, the rules are taught, and we are given exercises not to write sentences, but to transform them. And that is where the issue comes. And that is why the problem is. And that is, I would say, is the basis of my avoiding grammar. So if there are some teachers who teach how and when to apply those rules of grammar, their students are quite effective in using English language. Obviously, minimum adequate pronunciation and minimum adequate are the intrinsic parts, they are inherent parts of no grammar approach. Now, let's begin with some techniques. Let me introduce you. The first one is repetition or imitation. Here, from the names, you can very easily judge what is going to be there. Here, articulate a sentence. These are the instructions for teachers. A teacher goes on articulating. He says something and he asks his or her students to repeat it after him. This is what we do in our compulsory English classrooms when there is a reading exercise in the classroom. I ask them to read out. Wherever they are unable to read, I pronounce the word loudly and the student repeats it after me. And this is how it gains confidence. And when this becomes a kind of practice, they become quite confident. See, begin with the suggestion is because this approach is useful for maybe pre-primary, primary, even upper primary and secondary students also, and even the college teachers can use this in their classrooms. So when it's an issue of using imitation or repetition, begin with short sentences and proceed to longer sentences progressively. After sufficient practice, ask one or more students to articulate this or pronounce this, read out these sentences, and to the remaining students to repeat these sentences. So this can be very easily done. If students are not able to repeat the sentence, break the sentence into phrases for their convenience. I mean, this is exactly what we all do, and it is supposed to be done here also. Now, I'll show you some exercise also. While articulating a sentence, the first thing that the teacher should do is when he holds a pen, touch the object. If it is possible, show him the picture. Point out some person, this, that, perform some action. See, these are the ways in which we can establish relationship between words and their meanings. Movements and gestures often help us to explain the meaning of that word without much efforts. So this is how students would get to know some words, and from words and their pronunciation, they would try to remember it, memorize it, and when it comes repeatedly, it automatically gets drilled in their heads, and it settles down there, and they can use it as and when they want it. So this is how it goes on. I have taken only representative examples. When a teacher says, this is a pen, he holds a pen, his hand, and he simply asks his students, this is a pen, just repeat it. And the student would repeat, this is a pen. The teacher may indicate to his cap and simply say, this is cap, this is my cap. I mean, there are two indications, my and cap. So when teacher does this experiment time and again, when he indicates toward himself, my, student tries to, the learner tries to relate the articulation my with the indication, that is my simply means me, I am, this is something that belongs to me. That connection gets established, and this can be used, or this can be drilled by repeated use of it. Suhas is my friend, forget. Nilima is a tall girl. Now here indication is toward Nilima. Nilima is a girl, any girl for that purpose. I have these are just examples, any girl. And when you make tall, simply when the moment you say tall, you are expressing a gesture, you are making some actions, and these actions are somehow related to the word, and the meaning is mastered by the student. But in repetition, there are certain issues that I have faced, and most of my primary teachers with whom I have been working, I have been experimenting, have faced, is this focuses only on listening and speaking skill. Reading and writing is excluded from this technique. So this is recommended only for the learners who are beginners. For advanced learners, this is not applicable. This is for those who do not have sufficient confidence in them when they speak or when they try to communicate in English language. The second thing is minimum adequate pronunciation on behalf of teacher is essential. See, teacher should know how to pronounce or how to articulate a particular word. He or she should be able to read it properly. At least she should know, because it is often found that students imitate their teachers. See, my daughters try to imitate me. Elder one is 11 years old, younger one is 9 years old, and they try to copy me. So my pronunciation, that should be minimally acceptable. If it is not minimally acceptable, there are possibilities that it would be mispronounced, because recently I have come across a teacher who pronounces against, this word against, as against. See, this is because she has been copying her teachers, and this copying has drilled that habit of pronouncing that word against. So there a teacher has to be quite careful. This method takes a lot of time, so teacher has to be very patient with his students. And apart from that, the teacher should pay attention to every student, because it's our classes are crowded classes, particularly because in most of the classrooms we have more than 30 students, and when in certain classrooms the number goes above 60. In that cases, it's not possible for any teacher to pay attention to every student. So there the teacher can take some time and she may proceed with. Then obviously these are very useful for poetry recitation, songs, short stories, short paragraphs. I mean, I am often reminded about the after break session in my primary school. My teachers used to ask us that, okay, now start singing this poem, start singing this song, or say this story. And we all used to do it by heart, and only one person would say it, and we all will imitate, repeat after him. And this sessions went on. So this gives you confidence. I mean, in case of, use of songs and stories and poems, and recitation as a technique for teaching English is another issue of discussion. I won't go in detail, but just keep in mind that on some other day, maybe I'll discuss this issue also. But this is very useful for boosting up confidence level of students. Obviously, when they are able to recite some sentences, recite some poems in English, they feel very happy that, okay, at least I know something, I can speak something. So, but just keep in mind, overuse of repetition may handicap students. That's a serious problem, because once they develop habit of repeating after their teachers, that becomes a problem. The second technique is substitution, one of the most widely used technique, which has been used for years, ages together. I took this idea of substitution from F.G. Friend's book, famous book, English in Tables. If by chance, if you get a chance to go through it, I recommend that please go through it. It explains all the structures in English in tables. And from there, I have gathered this idea. Write a sentence on the board. I call this sentence the best sentence. Once you have written this best sentence on the board, just underline any word in the from that sentence and ask your student to substitute it with its own word. If students do not have their own words, just give a list of words on the board and help them to substitute the word. And if you practice it time and again, you would realize that this works tremendously. I mean, if time permits, I'll show you some of the sentences that the students from different schools from Maharashtra have written. And luckily, I happen to guide them about how to write these sentences. So once the sentence is written, just underline the any word, ask the students to substitute it, rewrite the sentence, new sentence. I mean, the whole sentence should be written with substituted word, not the original best sentence. Then repeat the process. Once we start repeating, students, we can give them some hints, and through hints, they get new ideas and they go on substituting new words. Allow students to use their own words. I mean, initially, the teacher may provide a list of words that, okay, this is the sentence and you may use these words suitably according to your convenience, and you can replace a particular word. The teacher may underline it, and this process may be used again and again. So this substitution gives them confidence. Each sentence with an altered word is a new sentence. That is the idea here. That is the principle here. That one altered word is a new sentence. The sentence becomes new. It has a totally different meaning. How does it work? Have a look at the screen and you would realize that the teacher has given this sentence. This is a pen. A pen has been underlined. This becomes a base sentence. Now, teacher goes on giving hints. A cap. This is a cap. A bag. This is a bag. A fan. This is a fan. So there is no chance of making mistake. When teacher is there to guide his or her students, there are no possibilities that students would. And these are short and simple sentences we can proceed with. If time permits, I may go for complex construction, but yes, don't worry about that. Simple sentences are okay right now. Then the teacher may ask his or her students to replace another word. For example, here in the subject position, we have Suhas is my friend. Instead of Suhas, use Raju. Asif. So these things can be very easily replaced. Just replace a noun with noun. Now, sorry for using a grammatical term, but let's proceed. How it works. He plays. Now I'm going to replace he with, he can be substituted further with some name. No change in the verb. Who is he? He is my brother. Who is he? He is my brother-in-law. Who is he? He is the Chief Minister of New Delhi. Who is he? He is our teacher. Who is he? He is my friend who is a doctor. Now look at the length of the subject. I mean, I feel very sorry, but you all are teachers and you should know what I have replaced. What I have substituted. Here, you can very easily go on lengthening or adding words in the subject itself. But the whole phrase taken together is just a single word. What we have to do as a teacher is to just introduce these things to our students, and that will do. Now, verb. Plays can be replaced with goes, eats, talks, writes, makes, invites. We have 7 subjects and 7 verbs. Can you imagine? We can frame at least 49 sentences here. Nothing is to be done so seriously. The only thing is, do it happily, do it easily, take your time, let students grasp everything. That's all. Be careful. Students make similar mistakes. What are the similar mistakes? They often substitute noun by an adjective or an adverb, like that. I mean, adjective for adverb, adjective for noun, and vice versa. Everything is there. There are possibilities. Hints help to minimize this mistake. Whenever such situation comes, a teacher has to help his or her student with hints. Give him or her hints, and the student would never repeat its mistake. Ignore mistakes at the beginning. No grammar approach basically allows all the learners to make mistakes. As Professor Thakur pointed out, that you're making mistakes simply means you're learning. So this is exactly what this no grammar approach also insists on. Do it. You would automatically come to know your mistakes with the passage of time. And whenever you realize that this is my mistake, just improvise it. That's all. Only practice reduces it. Okay. Then we have progressive substitution. The third technique. Progressive substitution is an advanced stage of, next stage of substitution. The sentence is to be given, but here the teacher has to give the teacher has to write the best sentence and underline all the words one by one. Substitute all words one by one. Rewrite the new sentence. The substituted word should be reused and the sentence should be rewritten on the board. Repeat the process. That would help. Hints may be given initially. Later on, hints may be stopped. Allow students to use their own words. Let them substitute any word from the best sentence. Not necessarily that I have underlined this word, so you should substitute only this one, this only. Let the child think. Let it come out with that language acquisition device and let it substitute the word whichever it finds convenient to substitute, because everybody cannot think of all the substitutions at a time. Correct only the major mistakes like subject verb concord and maybe sometimes tense. Beyond that, there is no need to rectify the mistakes related to articles and prepositions. Ignore them, because even I'm not sure about using articles and prepositions perfectly, accurately. So how can this be done? Just look at the screen. Teacher has his sentence. He bought some apples in the morning. This is the best sentence. He has underlined the first word he, then he underlined bought, then he underlined some, then he underlined apples, then morning. And at the end, we have the last sentence. The first sentence was, he bought some apples in the morning. And the last sentence is, Shyam gave a few oranges in the evening. Do you find any connection between the two sentences? These are two totally different sentences, which are framed by a student just by substituting one word each time. And you can very easily find out the link, how it goes on. So this is the advantage of progressive substitution. You can begin with a sentence and you can end up with a totally different sentence. So let me try something. This is Hima has cut the cake. I'm sorry. Yeah, Hima has cut the cake. Now, instead of cake, let's replace cake with a branch, a mango, a vegetable, the wire, something. Let's substitute schema with some different words and we have different combination. Let's substitute main verb, cut, brought, removed. Now you can imagine the number of sentences that we can have now, because more the number of words in a sentence, there are possibilities of more number of combinations, and this would certainly help them frame maximum number of sentences without making mistake. So this is progressive substitution. Yeah, here also only guided practice reduces mistakes. Mistakes are bound to be there. The mistakes that we have spoken about in the substitution technique. Practice all the 4 skills. See, writing sentences is the beginning in this particular approach, no grammar approach. But then when you write something and when it's your own sentence, it is quite easy to remember it, to reproduce it for spoken purposes. And that is what we need to train our students for. And they would be very efficient, not only in speaking, but also in writing. So if you go step by step, there are hardly any possibilities of making mistakes. But for that purpose, a teacher has to be proficient in the language. So that is what the first job is: be proficient in the language you are teaching. Expansion. Again, this is the next technique that I'm going to talk about. Use this only when students construct short sentences. See, so far I have given you short examples, short sentences. Those examples, those short sentences. Why am I talking about short sentences? I'm talking about short sentence because my teacher, Professor Gokhale, would always recommend that if you can say something in 5 words, say it in 5 words, or at least try to say it in 5 words. Why should you use 10 or 12 words to say the same thing? Because that is the definition of simplicity. Minimum number of words, simplify your sentence, simplify your expression. So let students begin with simple sentences, short sentences, and proceed them with the complex and compound sentences. Encourage students to expand length of sentence by inserting some word. One word at a time is more than enough, and the length of that sentence may be extended. It can be extended further. It helps us construct sentences more precise in meaning and expression. See how it works. I get up at 6 a.m. Now, this is the best sentence. I get up at 6 a.m. The teacher provides a hint always, and he hints where this always can be used. And the student says, I always get up at 6 a.m. Now, I get up at 6 a.m. and I always get up at 6 a.m. There is a minute difference between difference of meaning between the two sentences, and that difference can be notified. Always can be replaced with, not replaced, but substituted with every day. I get up at 6 a.m. every day. Now, the place of two words, the places of two words are different, and we need to give them hints. That is why, unless and until you have practiced substitution and repetition properly, don't go for this method. That is the suggestion. That is why these techniques come graded one after another. These are not, you can use as and when you want, whichever technique you want, you can start up with. No, I don't allow you to use them. And I don't allow because this is my property, I would say. See, so this is how we can train our students. See, look at the second sentence. He studied. It's a vague sentence. Then he went on just adding one question. He studied what? He studied English. He studied English when? He studied English yesterday. He studied English when? He studied English at 7 p.m. yesterday. Who else was with him? He and his sister studied English at 7 p.m. yesterday. Just you're increasing the length of this sentence and doing what? Inserting a single word at adequate. There are possibilities. Again, be careful. I mean, when I speak about things, there are always some disadvantages related to that. And students, there are possibilities that student would certainly insert a word, but the place of that word might not be correct. So here, a teacher has to take care that he gives hints initially, and once the sufficient amount of practice is given to him, he can stop giving hints. So this is what a teacher has to give. So practice is the only solution to everything. I mean, the moment I say the only way to learn any language is by practice and by exposure. This is how we have learned Marathi, and this is what we are doing here. The next technique is integration. I'm not sure about the time that I'm taking, but pardon me for 5 more minutes, just bear me. Integration, it's a step to frame compound and complex sentence. And how does it work? Connect two sentences using sentence connectors, that is conjunctions. Use them. And initially, you can begin with the coordinating conjunctions like and but, because these are very easy to use, or is quite slightly difficult, because very often I have found my students making mistakes while using or. So from among coordinating conjunctions, and but are very simple. And after that, you may go for subordinating conjunctions like who, when, where, which, that, who, if, unless, like that. There is a whole list of conjunctions around us, so that can be used here. So this would give you, I mean, use of and but would give you compound sentence, and use of other subordinating conjunctions would give you complex sentences. How does it work? It works like this. He is a singer. First simple sentence. He sings song. Second sentence. A teacher gives hint to his student and asks to put and after first sentence and before second sentence, and you have a compound sentence. He is a singer and he sings songs. My brother is tall. He is handsome. My brother is tall and he is handsome. Maybe after sufficient practice, you may train your student to frame a sentence like my brother is tall and handsome, but it would take some time. Right from the beginning, I have been talking about practice and time and patience. These three are keywords in this because the trend now is we all want to know English, we all want to be fluent in English, but we want to learn it like taking some medicine for some disease. We want to have a capsule, we want to eat it. After eating that capsule, I will be able to speak in a fluent manner and use English the way native speakers use it. My dear friends, it's not possible. It's only a dream. Be careful while using integration. There is possibility of use of inadequate conjunction. I mean, there are possibilities that a student may come out with some subordinating conjunction instead of coordinating conjunction, and the meaning of the sentence would change drastically. So initially, guided practice is necessary. Later on, you can go on adding things. Confusion is also possible because which to be used, butter or and that confusion may lead to some discouragement, but just encourage them by accepting the mistakes and explaining the meanings. And that is why the method of instruction, medium of instruction in this approach is strictly first language. Without sufficient practice of earlier techniques, integration cannot be effective. So this is what I have been telling you, that these are the techniques which are supposed to be used one after another. So probably the last one, simple questions and answers. Now questions is what I really love by heart, because I like to frame questions, I like to ask questions, and I don't know why. There are several questions before me and I try to get answers. Now frame simple questions at the beginning, probably yes no type questions. Students answer these questions as yes or no, and after their answer, ask the student to repeat the whole sentence. When it repeats the sentence, it gets some practice, and this practice would help him master the language. Tag questions and tonal questions also can be used. See, from among Indians, there is a craze of using tonal questions. You're busy, no? And tag questions, you're busy, aren't you? See, I mean, particularly tonal questions can be used initially because they would help them, because tonal question is nothing but a sentence spoken in a different tone, in a tone of question. So that is to be used initially, but they may be trained to frame questions. And after they are given sufficient practice of yes no type questions, tonal questions, tag questions, just go for content-based questions, that is WH questions. Now, how can this be done? See, framing question is the simplest job, but the teachers, most of the teachers have made it very complicated. What they have to do is to find out certain set of words. See, if this any of these words is available in the sentence, just pick it up and put it at the beginning of the sentence, put a question mark at the end of the sentence, and that's your question. Ram is playing chess. Here, I have to train my students to find out is. Look, if you can find, is there? Yes, is there. Just pick it up, put it before Ram, and your question is ready. Instead of full stop, just give a question. Is Ram playing chess? Change your tone, and that's all. That is a yes no type question. Same thing, Asha will dance, will. I have to train my student that these are the words. The whole list of am, is, are, was, where, will, shall, have, has, had, do, does, did. If they are there, use them. If they are not there, borrow. But borrowing, let the teacher take sufficient time. Once his or her students are trained enough to frame simple yes no type questions, then only you can proceed to the next level, that is borrowing. Same thing can be done with WH questions. I mean, one has to train what this particular word would expect answer. Ram is playing chess. Is Ram playing chess? Now here chess is the word that should be replaced, that should be asked about, and then the question related to that is to be introduced here, the word related to that is to be introduced here, and the teacher can do it. What is Ram playing? Your question is ready. The simple task here is he or she has to train his or her students to frame yes no type question first and then put a content based word before that, and that's how this WH word can be framed. I think I have taken some extra time. It's time for me to warn you all about this simple questions and answers techniques. Be careful. Begin with yes no questions. If you directly go to WH questions or questions where borrowing is essential, that would trouble your students. They would get discouraged. So go step by step, and you would be very easily able to train your students to frame ample number of questions, and they can answer them also. Initially, answer to the WH question should be one word, one phrase, or one sentence, not beyond that, because several times we find questions have answer in paragraphs and pages like that. Don't go for such questions initially. While asking questions, touch the object, thing, or something you want to ask about. This would help them understand the question easily. So this is how you can start with, and later on you can proceed to complexities. There is no end to it, I think. Okay, thank you so much. I'm really thankful to the organizers for allowing me to make presentation here, and allowed to have discussion with you all. I will be very happy if you have some suggestions, and if some questions are there, I would be happily answering that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kare sir. A really simply marvelous, lucid and spontaneous presentation. You started with the basic problem, and we stick up to the grammar, and the problem which you have mentioned in your presentation, we all are facing the same. Thank you, sir. Now, I request Dr. Manisha Patil, Head Department of English, Yashwantrao Chauhan Institute of Satara, for presidential address. Ma'am, please.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. A very good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, let me congratulate all the organizing team, Agrawal sir and his team, for organizing such a wonderful webinar on very pertinent topic. And since morning, we have been listening to Thakur sir, and right now Honorable Kare sir has thrown light on various aspects of ELT. Kare sir, I must congratulate you, and I really appreciate your presentation on no grammar approach. I do agree with the points that you have raised in your presentation, and the way you have put up all the points are really praiseworthy. I mean, you can see the chat box, everyone has praised your presentation. It was in a simple manner, and every point you have discussed in detail. You started with questions, and those questions really made us think about, are we really teaching language, or we are teaching a subject? Are our students learning the language? Are they getting the crux of the subject, or the interesting points of the English language? And then after your questions, you went to the no grammar approach, you explained. And I do agree with your statement, acceptable word order in a sentence. Very true, in fact, I would say in Maharashtra, majority of us are afraid of English language, using the language. We have knowledge base, we know everything. Our students are so good in the subject knowledge, but they lag behind in presentation. And why do they lag behind in presentation? It's the anxiety because of they only have the misunderstanding, or they feel that if they have to speak in English, it has to be grammatically correct, and a lot of importance is given to the grammar part. And whenever you all must have observed, or you all must have experienced this, when a student comes to you about difficulty in English speaking, they ask you to teach them grammar. And their idea is that once I learn grammar, then I will be able to speak correctly, or my English will be fluent. So Kale sir's presentation was really very, very important and very informative. And the focus was on, we should make the students feel comfortable with the language. And if we use the techniques, I appreciate, he didn't only talk about the theoretical part of no grammar approach. He did introduce about the lot of other approaches that we can have in our teaching. But apart from that, he made us feel comfortable with this no grammar approach. And apart from the theoretical information, he also gave us a lot of suggestions how we can make our students learn the language, how they can be comfortable with sentence construction, the base sentence. The techniques that he has presented today are really wonderful techniques, and those techniques will definitely help each and every of us to help our students in improving their language. The challenges that we are having in front of us, we all know about it. English language learning as well as teaching has become very difficult, because language skills, imparting language skills through online mode is a very challenging and tough job for every language teacher. So the techniques that sir has given us today will help us in improving, not only improving, but help us creating interest in our language. What I feel, I did research on anxiety of students. So when I was doing that research, I came across the facts that our teacher's role is very important. That another fact, that Kare sir's presentation highlighted. We the teachers have a very important role to play. So being a very responsible part of the society, we have to create our students interest in our in English language, so that they can improve that language. And I'm very happy, very proud presentation by Dr. Kare sir. And the organizers have taken up very important topic for today's presentations. And Thakur sir, right from the beginning, Savan sir set the the tone of our webinar. And at the end, Kare sir has put up, no, I won't say full stop, but he has given a lot of things to give a thought about. Thank you, Kare sir, for raising very important issues and very important things in your presentation. At the end, I express my sincere gratitude towards the principal of the college, Honorable Principal Dr. S.B. Patil sir, organizer Honorable Dr. Agarwal sir, and his whole team. I congratulate you all for organizing this wonderful webinar on a very important issue. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your compliments.
Thank you, ma'am, for your presidential address. I would like to request participants if there are any questions. Okay, thank you.
Sir, I won't ask a question. I have a question. Hello, am I audible, sir?
Sorry for it. Now I invite Mr. Devendra Ranavre to express deepest sense of gratitude towards speaker and chairperson for their presentations. Please, Ranavre sir.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Honorable dignitaries, today's distinguished resource person, Dr. Kale sir, respected chairperson, Dr. Manisha Patil madam, and dear participants. On behalf of Chhatrapati Shivaji Shikshan Mandal's Honorable Dada Saheb Jyotiram Godse, Arts, Commerce, Science College, Vaduz, and its entire fraternity and the organizing committee, I feel immense pleasure to take this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks to our eminent resource person, Dr. Jnandev Kale sir, Head Department of English, Amdar Shashikant Shinde College, Medha. I present my sincere gratitude to Dr. Kale for delivering very impressive presentation on no grammar approach to English language teaching. That appears as one of the most important topics that really matters in current English teaching approaches. Dr. Jnandev Kale sir presented very lucidly the no grammar approach, and I think I can't avoid my temptation to subtitle this presentation as the most natural way of learning language. Sir, this was a free flow, but the flow was deep and well channelized. So each participants and teachers can take most of the content of your teaching, your lecture as in practice. We are truly enriched by your truly inspiring presentation. I would further extend a hearty thanks to Dr. Manisha Patil madam, Head of English Department, Yeshwantrao Chauhan Institute of Science, Satara, for her generous appearance and the chairperson of plenary session and sparing grace to this webinar with her extremely relevant presidential address. My deep sense of appreciation and thanks to all the participants who chose to be live with us and attended the webinar with great enthusiasm and made it a successful event. Now let me hand it over to Dr. Sachin Kamble sir to proceed to the webinar to the valedictory function. Dr. Kamble sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Ranavre sir.
Thank you, sir.
Now we are turning towards valedictory. I invite and request our Honorable Principal, Dr. S.B. Patil sir, for presidential speech. Patil sir, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone of you. I have great honor to say Chhatrapati Shivaji Shikshan Mandal's Dada Saheb Jyotiram Godse Mahavidyalaya organized a webinar series. And among this webinar series, I'm very happy that this webinar is conducted successfully. This is our 10th webinar during this second wave of pandemic situation. I congratulate our Department of English and our Honorable Head of the Department of English, Agarwal sir, Dr. Kamble sir, the coordinator of IPS, our IPS coordinator, to organize such a wonderful webinar on such an important topic related to English language teaching. It was a really face to mind. Dr. Shardul Thakur, as a keynote speaker, opened a new vista of the ideas so far English language teaching is concerned. His style is a simple, lucid, and convincing. The Principal Bandari sir chaired the session. As a human being, he too a good person and gives good ideas. The second speaker, Dr. Jnandev Kale, was simply wonderful. His topic speak on no grammar approach to the English literature teaching is really innovative. You know, English is a problem in our schools and colleges. Really speaking, Dr. Khalid tried to touch the heart of the problem. His deliberation was forceful and intimate. Honorable Dr. Manisha Patil was in the chair. She is a dynamic, enthusiastic, was fortunate to have in her chair. Our department invited moderators from neighboring colleges. This thing is really appreciable. Dr. Dadas has visited our college IQAC a good number of times. All moderators shoulders us a very nice manner. On this occasion, I congratulate all and say a big thank to you on behalf of Dadasaheb Godse Mahavidyalaya and our Department of English and ELT at the rate of Satara chapter. And I request the Department of English and other departments to organize many more such intellectual events. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You are always the source of inspiration to arrange this kind of seminars, workshops, and conferences. You are the real motivator. You have come and you started this webinar series. You are really the source of inspiration for us, source of motivation for us. Now we are at the end of the program. I would like to request Dr. Arvind Jadhav, Secretary ILTI and Head Department of English, to offer vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Yes, really, the deliberations were going well and it come to an end. I am here to propose vote of thanks. Chhatrapati Shivaji Shikshan Mandal's Dadasaheb Jyotiram Godse Arts, Commerce and Science College, Vaduz, organized today's webinar, Recent Trends in English Language Teaching. And wonderfully, it was organized. So first of all, I would like to thank Honorable Chairman, respected Dadasaheb Godse, alias Anna, for giving us this opportunity to organize this webinar and support us to execute it. I would also like to thank Honorable Vice Chairman of this Samstha, Prithviraj Godse Sahib, and he also remained present for this webinar. I also thank after that Honorable Principal of this college. Now he has made a presidential remark in this seminar. Honorable Patil sir, I am thankful to him for such a organization of this seminar. I must thank keynote speaker Dr. Shardul Thakur for his presentation on approaches to ELT, that is English language teaching, and another resource person, Dr. Nandev Kale, who delivered a lecture on no grammar approach to ELT. I am very much thankful to both of you, sir. There were two chairpersons who chaired the sessions, Dr. Sanjay Dikshit sir for the former and Dr. Manisha Patil ma'am for the latter session. Both of them have also made their speeches lucidly. Our moderators, Dr. Dadas sir, Dr. Uttari ma'am, Dr. Jatar sir, and Dr. Ranaure sir have played a role as a moderators to make this seminar or webinar success. I am also thankful to all the teachers, staff, and non-teaching staff of this college, and especially I thank librarian B.B. Mane for making this Zoom setup and the subscription of that, which enable us to conduct this webinar. I am also thankful to all the LTI Satara chapter team, Honorable Professor Dr. Sunil Samant sir, and all other office bearers of LTI Satara chapter. And I also thank all the participants, all the teachers and students for being present. Thank you so much. If I have missed anyone, forgive me. And with this, I just hand over to Dr. Kamble sir for the final announcement.
Thank you, sir. Feedback link is shared in the chat box. Thank you.